Hi, my name is Robb Holman. I'm author of a new book called Lead the Way, and I'm also a speaker and international leadership consultant. And today on Dov Baron's Leadership Podcast, I'm so excited to talk to you about the things that really matter, discovering or rediscovering your life purpose and live according to it. So stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. I'm your host, Dov Baron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so that you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership. Thank you for joining us. Borrowed this mouth this morning. All right. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series, where today we're going to be taking an insider look at why 90% of the strategies being used to create engagement fail miserably and what we can do to reverse that. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. And of course, if you're a regular, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. We're always completely honored for that and deeply grateful to Inc.com, who also cited us as their #1 podcast to make you a better leader. So that's pretty cool too. So thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Remember, we always need your help in staying relevant, so please get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. All right, let's strip it down, dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, C-suite leader, sales leader, entrepreneur, leader in any capacity whatsoever, you know, on this show, we have never shied away from looking at the real problem when it comes to engagement, or rather disengagement, and our approach to dealing with that. The question is, have we actually been trying to deal with disengagement in a way that's actually opposite to what we need to be doing? Well, stay tuned because you're about to find out. Our guest today on this episode is Robb Holman. He is a serial entrepreneur who has founded numerous highly influential organizations, both profit and non-profit. He is the founder of a global leadership consultancy firm dedicated to revolutionizing the way business leaders operate. He has guided his clients to discover and how to connect with their own unique life purpose and find success in a way that they never expected from the inside out. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Robb Holman.
Dov, that's quite an intro. Listen, it's a joy to be with you. I'm honored to be on the show, and I know you and I have a lot in common, and we love to really get into the heart of the matter, which I'm looking forward to engaging with you today in just that.
I'm looking forward to it, mate. Thank you. And if you really paid attention, you'll notice that there was actually more applause for you than there was for your football team.
Hey, we'll have to see after my beloved Eagles. We'll see how they fare in about a week from this recording, a little less than a week now. But as you can imagine, the greater Philadelphia area where I'm from, people are pretty ecstatic, but at the same time, we're pretty nervous, not really completely understanding of how our team's going to show up, if they're going to show up, and how they're going to play. But we're always hopeful.
I find sports a very interesting thing because I don't follow sports. I do them. I don't follow them.
Yeah.
Not since I was a kid. But it's interesting to me because, in the context of leadership, that so many people are willing to stand in the stadium and cheer for their squad, cheer for their team, cheer for, whoever it is that they're cheering for, and they don't cheer for their team at work.
Yeah.
They don't cheer for the team that they lead. They don't cheer for the team they're in. But they'll go and spend all that money and time and energy and create special food and have parties and go to the stadium and spend hundreds upon hundreds of dollars and time and energy and effort. And that we don't do that for our teams. And to me, that's a very clear insight around engagement. What's your thoughts on that? Because you are a big football fan.
I'm a big football fan, and I don't know if you knew this. I played 7 years of professional basketball.
I did not know
that. I did. And so I had a couple opportunities that never panned out in the National Basketball Association and bounced around a lot of the developmental leagues for the NBA. And this is back, many moons ago. However, learned a lot from playing competitive sports. And to answer your question, and I couldn't agree more with you, Dub. I mean, at the end of the day, people get all jazzed up. They're all excited. They paint their faces. They paint their bodies. And they go, wow, get all excited. At the end of the day, true team camaraderie takes time. It takes effort. You got to get engaged in the messiness. And that's one of the things I actually miss from competitive sports is the team camaraderie.
Right.
Because these are men that I spent day in and day out with. And we were in the grind together. We were climbing the mountain together to accomplish a common goal. And sadly, sometimes people, to your point, are more invested in things that at the end of the day, do they truly matter? But how about where we're spending, 80% of our time? In the workplace. And it's a true testament of those that do spend time with people that really matter to them and going after a common vision, a common goal together. Right. There's a depth that comes when you're committed in that process. It's like any good marriage, any good business relationship. When you're committed, it might not be a quick fix right away. You might not be on the same page as soon as you get married, as soon as you engage in that business partnership. But in time, if you remain committed, there's a depth that would never be there otherwise.
But we live in the time. I mean, I talked about in the intro that you've been a serial entrepreneur, and we live in a time where entrepreneurs are rock stars, and we also know that entrepreneurs are not necessarily business people. And this is one of the things, the great illusions. I know for sure that I am more entrepreneurial than I am business.
Yeah.
I'm a high creative. I'm a high stimulus, and I live in a time where millennials are coming up and they're more high stimulus and more, all those things. Yeah. So, that level of commitment, I'm very good at commitment. That is my strength. But very often that doesn't go hand in hand with entrepreneurship. It's, this is not working. We've been doing it for 3 weeks, so let's just abandon ship. Or, Charlie's not really working out. He's been here 3 days. Well, again, that commitment piece. From your point of view, Rob, and the people that you work with, how do we get people to engage in commitment? So not just engagement, but commitment. How do we get them to say, yeah, I want to commit?
Well, I think, and you hit on this is a huge part of your message, Dub, which I so appreciate on authenticity. And one of the things I love from your, Fierce Loyalty, your book, was how do you truly engage in authentic relationship? So I'm going to touch on that even from my perspective. I think genuine relationship, they take time. You got to see, you're not going to see eye to eye on everything, but you got to be willing to enter into the real deal in relationship. And I believe that starts by owning your story and sharing your story. So I think if people on the front end begin to understand one another's stories. Now, I understand there's a lot built within that. There's vulnerability, there's transparency, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if we're willing and we can train people up on doing just that and stepping out, and listen, let's be honest, people feel naked when they do that.
Of course.
Because there's a lot that comes with that, a lot of weightiness, a lot of history, a lot of past that people aren't totally excited about. But when we're committed to that process of getting to know one another, now, on a personal level, I know the person I'm working with and working alongside. Now, in the midst of that, we can deal with business things. And it's as though I know you got my back, because trust is everything. If we don't have trust, we don't have anything.
I agree.
And authentic relationship, I think we got to take the time that's necessary on the front end and throughout the relationship of truly getting to know one another.
So let's go to that. You and I'm in Starbucks. And I'm standing on a box, so you and I are eye to eye.
Standing on a box?
You're basketball.
Hey, I was a little slow on that when I eventually caught up, but you're right. I am 6'4".
Right, so I'm standing on a box.
On a bad day, I'm 6'4", yeah.
So I'm standing on a box, and we're eye to eye. And I say to you, what's your story?
Yeah.
What's your story? What's the thing you would have to deliver while they're making coffee for us? What would you have to say to me to get me engaged?
Yeah. For me, I love dealing with life milestones. You don't have to feel like you got to shove your entire story, in a 5-minute time period or even 50-minute time period. But I think if you can hit on life milestones, the things maybe early in age, adolescent, middle, whatever, when you were first married, you had your first child, but take me through the journey of when you were younger leading up to the present day. And I'll give you a prime example for me. Over the years, I've owned my story and aspects of it, and it engages people. So I'm going to touch on a couple things that I think will help your listeners, your viewers, better get to know me, so they may even feel like, wow, all right, Rob's a real person. He's got a heart that beats like me. He goes to the bathroom like I do. Okay, now we can move on. So for me, Dove, I grew up in a family. I have 2 siblings, and of course, mom and dad. So there's 3 of us as far as brothers and sisters. I'm the middle child. So I'm a peacemaker. I'm like, when there's turmoil or challenge or trip, whatever, I'm like, can we just get along? Come on, life's too short. So life for us in the Holman family, far from problems like any family. I think if we're all honest, there's dysfunction in every bit of family.
Well, as John Bradshaw said, 97% of families are dysfunctional and the other 3% are liars.
There you go, man. There you go. So I'm part of that 90%. I dare not say I'm part of the 3%, but I'm part of the 90%.
Sure.
So growing up in a family, mom and dad had some marital issues.
Sure.
And they tried to work on their issues. We had a family therapist growing up. And here I am as a middle child, very sensitive. I wear my heart on my sleeve. My dad had some anger issues. And, but I was still tight with my parents, but a lot tighter with my mom, a lot closer to my mom during the time where my parents were going back and forth. Well, after my junior year of high school, my mom finally took me to a local lake, a local park that had a lake, and she told me that her and my father were going to get divorced. And later in life, counselors, therapists told me that I kind of shoved or repressed my emotions so I wouldn't have to feel the pain being such a sensitive kid.
Sure.
But when my mom took me aside that one day and said, your dad and I are getting divorced, I'm telling you, Dub, it's like all the emotions came and they overwhelmed me. And I started to say, what did I do to cause this potentially? So long story short, so I struggled with this for quite a few years. I went off to college and inside, now people would never know it from the outside. Outside, I was happy-go-lucky Rob, partying on the weekends. And if I'm really honest, I probably partied some Wednesdays and Thursdays as well. And I was a basketball player. I was a business student. But I would remember taking long walks around the college campus late at night throughout my 4 years of college. And I was a lonely, hurting 21-year-old kid at this particular, my senior year. And I would cry. I would find places where no one could even find me. And I would cry. I would bawl my eyes out. I would question God. God, are you alive? Why is this happening to me? All the why questions in life. And then I clean up my snot, my tears, and I walk back to the college apartment and acted as though everything was okay. Until what I'm about to explain to you completely changed my life. Going into my senior year of college, age 21. And Dub, come on, 21, you're entering into your senior year of college. It's supposed to be the best year of your life.
Especially if you're at college.
Good point. So here I am, and I had a tumor in my abdomen area. It was extremely painful.
So you knew it was a tumor at 21?
Yeah, 21 years old.
But you knew it was a tumor. It wasn't just pain.
Yeah, it was a tumor. It was in my midsection, in my abdomen, extremely painful, getting in and out of cars.
Wow.
And I went back to the college campus to get a basketball physical to get checked out. Well, the doctor checks me out. He examines me. And he said, Rob, you need to get in to get some tests done right away. Now, think of it this way. Our basketball team is a big basketball. I mean, we're on board for the NCAA tournament that senior year. It's my senior year. And now I walk out of that doctor's office. It was the lowest point of my entire life.
Sure.
I walk a half mile across campus to my college apartment, and it literally was the loneliest, most numbing walk of my entire life. I couldn't even feel anything. Well, so the condition actually went specifically undiagnosed for nearly a month and a half. I got tests, CAT scans, MRIs, ultrasounds. If there was a specialist in the greater Philadelphia area, I saw them probably multiple times.
Right.
Until I finally see this ultrasound specialist at UPenn Hospital in the city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I go in with major pain, this clear undiagnosis leading up to this point. He checks me out and he says, Rob, I cannot clearly explain what I'm about to tell you. And I'm like, well, please tell me. He said, you no longer have any mass in your abdomen area. All the previous tests were clearly showing a mass and a tumor, but now, Dove, absolutely nothing. Well, leading up to this point, before age 21, purpose for me in my life was, again, going out and drinking with the guys, winning the next basketball game, passing my high-level business classes. I mean, that was purpose for me. But now, coming out of this miraculous turn of events in my life, I was asking questions I'd never asked before.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I alive? Why did this happen to me? What message do I have in my heart that possibly, just possibly, the world has to hear? And little did I know, we fast forward now over just about 21 years later, I'm here to help business owners, executives, and leaders all over the world, help them with their personal purpose and see that infused into what they do in their professional life.
So you were in pain, you were diagnosed, you had a mass, and then the mass was gone.
Yeah.
What is the period of time between the last time there was there's identification of a mass to the next time there's no mass?
Yeah. So basically, when the doctor, I go into that doctor's meeting at age 21 with a mass. And by the time I left that doctor's meeting, it was maybe an hour appointment. We're getting tests and talking and filling out forms. There was no mass. And it's never been back since in approximately 21 years. But here's to make the story even that much more bizarre, but it's true. Do you know when I walked out of that doctor's office, I still had pain in my abdomen?
Of course.
And I was like, I even said to the doctor before I left, I said, this can't be right. I still have pain. He goes, Rob, I don't even know what exactly has happened other than to say you don't have anything. And it was like fireworks going off in the depth of my being. And so here's what I did. I left that meeting and I started to share with my parents what had happened. And they were cheering and happy as can be. And I start sharing with people around the college campus, starting with my roommates and my college basketball players. And do you know, with every person that I shared what had happened with, the pain subsided more and more. Mm-hmm. Within 24 hours, the pain completely left my body and has never been back since.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So do you think you knew then at 21 that was a sign for you to do something different with your life? Or was it, you were 21, you were like, wow, that was miraculous and it was amazing and, I'm very grateful. And then you go on.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say it this. I was awakened to something more. Mm-hmm. I was ignited, inspired, awakened to something more. I didn't have a clue with what that meant.
No.
I just knew there was something more for me, and I was okay not having the full picture in that time, or dare I say, even in that season of my life.
Right.
I just knew in my knower that things were going to change, and slowly but surely, things began to change. I started to get more clarity in and through relationships, my career path shortly after I graduated, and I just let things unfold. And I encourage people all the time, Dov. Maybe people are listening, and they're like, I haven't had anything that extreme happen to me. But we all have, as subtle as they may be or as extreme as they may be, we all have wake-up calls in life.
Absolutely we do.
It could come in and through a relationship, a conflict within a relationship. It could come within a shift in career change. It could come within a new venture that we're beginning to step out. It could come with forgiving someone that's deeply hurt you.
Well, I think that, the reason I asked you the question is because I've spoken a lot about this myself. As you may or may not know, and certainly many of our listeners know, in 1990 I fell off a mountain and got smashed to pieces. And one of the things I often say to people is everybody goes through a fall. Right. Not everybody survives the fall, and not everybody is changed by the fall. The fall does not determine the change. The fall is an opportunity for change. And that's why I asked you about once you had that, because it's easy to go back and start to take life for granted again and to shift back. Yeah. You and I have a slightly different than usual look at a particular subject I want to bring up here, which is the distinction between self-discovery and self-help. You talk about that in your new book, Lead the Way. Talk to our listeners about what you see as the distinction between those two things, because I think there are things that people mix up all the time.
Yeah. Great question. I think of self-help. Listen, I'm to some degree, I'm a part of the self-help industry, self-improvement industry, of course. I want to see people be the best them as possible. I want to see you be the best you. How we go about it means everything, though. And I have found that self-help many times, it's the same people coming back for the same kind of information over and over and over again. It's like the good old nursery rhyme that I'm sure many people are familiar with. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And I have found when we're trying to become the next better you, me, it can lead into unhealthy striving, trying to grasp for the next better me, and only to find out that, man, this is a whole lot of work. I don't know if is this what it should actually be? Or it can lead to comparisons. Mm-hmm. If I just had the looks, the power, the money, the prestige, the relationships as my business partner, as Dub Barron, as Robb Holman, as opposed to being committed to a process of looking deep within yourself. And I've found that there are seeds of greatness. Now, this is a vulnerable place to go for people, because people are usually even raised, brought up, and then, of course, in their career path and bosses, managers, supervisors they've had, they're always told of what they need to do better, what they need to do to improve, and I'm not against those things. But negativity, even constructive criticism, surrounds us all the time. However, what doesn't surround us nearly as much is people looking into your eyes, not in some weird way, in a very focused, present way, to say, this is what I love about you. Mm-hmm. This is what I see in you. And I've found that when we are committed to a process of discovering the seeds of greatness that are on the inside of us, that actually gives way to anticipation, expectancy of what's to come in our lives and what's to come in the life of other people when we encourage them to do the same thing. So again, I view almost self-help of trying to put yourself back together again that leads to unhealthy striving, whereas discovery, anticipation, exploration that leads, it's healthier. It doesn't lead to that unhealthy striving and the comparison. And there's almost like a newness to it, a fresh breath behind it. And again, most people aren't familiar or comfortable with that because they're afraid, wow, if I committed to a process of taking a deeper look within myself, I'm afraid I might find out some pretty horrible things.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to bring up, because I'm writing a new book exactly on this subject. So one of the things here is that people, when we talk about self-discovery, the fear that comes up is, I'm going to discover what I don't like. I'm going to discover that if I look there, I will cry. And if I cry, I will not stop crying. I might go into a depression. I might not be able to function. I might not be able to focus. There is this negative connotation with self-discovery. Mm-hmm. Whereas with self-help, there's a positive sort of anticipation. I'm going to get the right things. And I agree with you. I think it's about gluing shit on rather than tearing stuff off. And for me, it's all about let's reveal, not let's add. And, many of my top clients in the world that I've worked with who are hugely successful will often say to me, you've taught me all kinds of cool things, but I feel like I've got less than I have more, because it was removing more than it was adding. How do you confront that question of, but I don't know if I can do this, Rob, because I might not like what I find if I go into self-discovery?
I say, you may not. But that's why having someone or someones to come alongside of you in that process is invaluable. Mm-hmm. And it gets into accountability. It gets into when you do have some trusted relationships, whether that's in a formal way through a coaching relationship or with informal, through our spouse or close friends or companions, whatever that looks like. Mm-hmm. The importance for people to go into the self-discovery process with other people that they can slowly but surely trust is really important. Because I agree, it's like if you don't have trust with someone and someone says, I want to dive into your deepest, most vulnerable places of your life, it's like, who's going to sign up for that?
Right.
But if there's some level of trust built with the person that's coming alongside of you in the midst of that, Now it's like, okay, it might be a bit scary. It might be a bit mysterious. It might be. But again, you can do this because I'm with you and we have each other's back. And matter of fact, you're not going to be alone in it because I'm going to share with you some of my vulnerable aspects along this journey as well. And now you're sharing in it. And it gets back to those authentic relationships. Absolutely. So much life does, doesn't it, Dov?
Absolutely. So tell us, if I was to say to you, what is the best metaphor for what you do? What would you say that would be? What would you say is a great metaphor for how you work with your clients? What it is that happens?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I'm a farmer. And at the end of the day, I plant seeds and I water seeds. And I know if I'm diligent and coming alongside of someone and to serve and even get under them at times, I'm planting those seeds and I'm watering those seeds. So in due season, I know that individual is going to reap a harvest if they don't give up. And so if I can be that seed planter, that water, listen, I don't grow the seeds. I don't. That's not my responsibility. But I know I have a responsibility to plant seeds and to water the seeds. So if I do my job and I do it well by serving that individual with servant leadership and encouraging them and inspiring them and holding them accountable to the greatness within them, now I believe that in time, it's like every great farmer, Dov, they know that those seeds aren't going to reap harvest as soon as they plant seed. You know, I come from a farming background, not personally, but my dad does, and he's taught me a lot over the years about farming. And, you know, if you plant those seeds and you make sure they're watered properly and they get that direct sunlight, that you anticipate a pretty big harvest at the right time.
Right.
And so that's the metaphor. That's what the picture I would use to paint pictures mine. I'm a farmer, but in a very interesting way,
sure,
if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you have a new book out, Lead the Way. What you've been doing what you've been doing for a long time. What inspired this book? And what do you see as the central message that, like, if I again in Starbucks said to you, okay, well, what's the new book? You told me, and I said, okay, well, what's the central message of this book? If you had to sort of cram it down into a couple of lines, what is it?
Yeah. So I finally wrote a book because over the years, over 20 plus years of teaching on my inside out principles, leadership principles, people kept on like tugging on me slowly but surely. Would you just write? And Dov, I don't know about you. I don't want to answer certainly for you, but I can only speak for myself. Writing is a bit of a challenge for me. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm more of a speaker. I'm more of a verbal communicator. Ever since I was 5 years old, and I used to get in trouble in kindergarten because I would speak out loud when you're not supposed to, because I thought, come on, rest time. We got stuff to do. I don't know. I just find that there's a challenge for me writing. I do write. I write blog articles, of course, written a book. I'm working on my second book now as a follow-up. But thank God for transcribing my work, because now I can take keynotes and workshops and stuff, and now it automatically, through a lot of great resources, begin to put words to my talks. Anyway, but people kept on saying, Rob, would you just write? Because I've come across, a video of yours, I've seen a workshop, and I just want something in a very concise manner, and so I was like, all right, enough's enough. And I was inspired by all the people I've had a chance to serve and serve faithfully for over 20 years now, and until I reached the tipping point. And the tipping point was about 2 years ago when I said, I got to start like putting my fingers to the keyboard and I got to get this thing done. And so, yeah, that's the release of my new book. It's been a pretty amazing journey. And throughout the writing process, I must say this to you, I would oftentimes well up with tears of the people that have greatly influenced me. Starting in the home, family, friends, those that have mentored and coached me and continue to this present day. And so for me, I'm so grateful for the opportunity finally to get out my message to people all over the world in a very different way, very concise manner.
So again, I want to come to that, but I want to ask you, sum up the book for me. Give me that couple of lines that, if I'm like I said, met you in Starbucks and I'm going to go to the bookstore. Why would I go to the bookstore? Because let's face it, there's millions of books on leadership.
Yeah.
So why would I go get this one?
I think so many people are fascinated with the big why question. Why do I exist? And I help people in very practical and inspirational ways in the book. If you want to know why you exist, get to know who you are. And again, that speaks to, and there's 5 ways I help people discover, rediscover who they are that then would help them determine why they exist. Because that's the big question. So many people ask, whether it's formal, informal, subconsciously, consciously, people want to know why they're on the planet.
Right.
What difference can they make apart from 7.5 billion people on planet Earth? And I'm a big one. If you want to know why, get to know who.
So walk us through a little bit of that discovery process so that our viewers, our listeners, can get a sense of the practicality of that. How would they begin? Walk us through how you would walk one of your clients through some of that process.
Yeah, 5 particular ways, 5 things to consider in helping you understand who you are. Number 1 is, what are your personal core values? The personal core values, these are things that you stand firm in, you stand by. These are deep convictions of the heart. You're actually making decisions out of these deep places all day long and may not even fully realize it. So I'll give you an example from me, very practically. One of my personal core values is commitment. So I've got to know this about myself, and other people close to me got to know that I have a deep level of commitment and how I define commitment. Because if I'm not careful, I'll put my level of expectation of how I view commitment on other people, and that may be fair or unfair, Dub. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So number 1 is, what are your personal core values? Second, what are your top strengths? I love, of course, StrengthsFinder 2.0 with Tom Rath, great resource out there, as we're very well aware of. These are natural talents. The things ever since you were young in age that come naturally, more naturally to you, where there's a lot of fruit, positive fruit that just comes from it. It's not as much work. There's an ease with it. Even though for other people that may not be as strong in these areas, it's like they have to sweat at the brow. It's tremendous work for them. But for you, there's an ease.
Right.
What are those things? I'll give you an example. For me, it's influencing other people. Ever since I was a kid, it's a strength God's given me of just, I talk to 1 or I talk to 1,000, and I hold it. It's a great responsibility. And I didn't even know what to do with it years ago, but now it's one that I'm a pretty good steward of because I realize the responsibility with it.
Right.
Third is, what are your greatest passions in life? And let me describe or define passions. Like, these are the things that have you overjoyed as soon as you awake in the morning to go and to do and to accomplish. So what is it about, for me, it's going out and playing basketball. I'm passionate about the game of basketball.
Right.
There's just something about basketball. It's therapeutic for me. The team camaraderie involved in it. It refreshes me. It renews me. But what are an individual's greatest passion areas? And this is like, we got to know these things because this is what helps our cup always overflow onto other people. It's refreshing. It's renewing. We remain at rest when we're engaging in these things on a very consistent and intentional basis. The 4th area, which we touched on a little earlier, is, what are your personal core life milestones? These life milestones, these things that have happened in your life, maybe ever since you were a little kid, that are good, that are challenging, that are somewhere in between. Mm-hmm. But they've helped shape you to become the person you are today.
Absolutely.
I'll give an example of my life, right? For me, one challenging thing, which I mentioned earlier, it was when my mom announced to me, your dad and I are getting divorced. I was rocked at the core. But I knew, Dov, in that time, I didn't even know what it meant, but I knew in that time I'd probably never be the same person again.
Right.
Now, on the flip, there's some amazing things that happen.
Of course.
I mean, when I proposed to my wife, we've been married now 13 years, it'll be 14 years in May. When I proposed to her, all that was built into that, like me overcoming fear of trust issues and commitment issues in my own personal life and relationship with others. And I loved her enough to say, will you marry me? And she said, yes. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I go back to those emotions. The pure emotions, and that to me is a huge life milestone. And I'm a firm believer when we not only know, but we embrace our life milestones, there's more to our purpose than we realize it in and through those things. Mm-hmm. The 5th and final area that helps you discover who you are, that leads you into understanding why you exist, is, what's the primary gift that you've been given in life? In other words, it's something you become to the world around you. Are you a great encourager of people? Mm-hmm. Are you a great compassionate person? In a sense, you've owned it to such a degree, this gift, that you become a gift to the world, that it's a legacy you leave behind, so that when you're no longer on this earth, you leave it behind to affect future generations. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I've just found out this about myself, and I operate and function out of this place. I'm an encourager. Right. And encouragement, I've only come to find, isn't merely making people feel good about themselves. That can be an aspect of it, but it's instilling courage in people. When they feel down and out, when they feel like they can't, you come alongside, you look in their eyes and say, I know who you are when you don't even understand, and you can do this thing.
So the person's gone through that process. They've got their 5 questions. Of course, there's a need for self-discovery in there, and everybody has to, even as you're listening and doing this right now, you probably have some things that pops up in your head. But, I would encourage you, I'm sure Rob would too, that you take out a pen and paper and you write this down, and you take a little bit of time with each one, and you'll probably find there's levels of depth. So that your first answer to what you think you value is actually not often what you actually value, as an example. And when you came to the milestones, for example, you probably came up with 3 or 4 that popped into your mind. But there's some others that have had significant impact on you that you've not really thought about in a while. So I encourage you to go back and do that. And I will say this at the end of the show too, it's important for you to go back and do it more than once. However, now the person's got all these things in front of them, they go, okay, that was revealing, so what?
Yeah. I just say to them at that point, Dov, you're on your own. We'll see you later. No. No, it's a great question. You can't help to go through a process like this and the level of depth in which you're describing, because there is depth with each of those areas, and there's a lot of crossover and dotted lines. And now in the midst of it, you are not just understanding and becoming aware of, now you're slowly but surely embracing who you are. The next appropriate question I have people engage in is, okay, so in light of this, what is a problem you personally see or have experienced in this world that drives you up the wall? And maybe you read about it, you hear about it, you're in consistent communication with loved ones or business partners about this issue, about this topic. And I don't know, every time it's mentioned, every time it's talked about, there's something deep on the inside of you, like this alarm goes off. And you may not even fully be aware of it, but you're like, as long as I live, I've got to do something about this. I've got to play my part. I've got to play a role. What is it for you? And I've just found, like, for me, people ask me, well, Rob, you help people with their purpose. What's yours? Great question. When I see someone who's down and out, that's going through the motion, like an influential leader that has all this influence. One would argue all this power, all this authority, all this, and they're kind of going through the motions. Or they're misleading people, or they're misguiding them because they're not walking in their fullness of who they're created and designed to be. I start to come alive. When I come across or hear a story like that, I'm like, I got to do something about this. Mm-hmm. My company's got to help this person in some way, form, or fashion to help them rediscover who they are so that they can own themselves and own their story that much better, that much more significantly. And I just find that now if I can start to help other people understand what is that injustice in the world, maybe it is a business problem, a personal problem, a humanitarian or philanthropy issue, but what is it for you? And now when you begin to identify that problem, what can you, now knowing how you're wired and what really matters to you, what part can you play to be a solution for that?
Yeah. It's interesting. You and I have a very similar philosophy around this, because in the work that I do, as you know, a lot of the work that I do is around, and work with individuals and companies, is around purpose. And one of the things I'll say to people is, if you want to look at who changed the world, it's not the people who are good and kind and wonderful. It's the people who are pissed off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, look at it, right? I mean, the mechanism may not have been angry, but their seed was anger. Martin Luther King is one of the greatest heroes of my life.
Me too.
Pissed off about the way black people were treated. Fantastic. Yeah. Gandhi, the father of the peaceful resistance, was pissed off the way the Indians were being treated by the British. Anybody who's made a significant change in the world has been motivated by something that they saw as an injustice. And because of, I know you have a background in it too, but because of my philosophical religious studies, I can look at those people too. I can look at the Buddha and I can say, there's an example of it. I can look at Jesus and I can go, there's an example. The rabbis are saying it's this way, and these are the rules. Hold on a sec, I want to go against that. There is a rebellion. There is a part of us that says, this is bullshit. And I need to be part of the solution. And I think that the reason I agree with you, and I said there's a great parallel here around the self-discovery, is because some people have no grasp of the thing that pisses them off. They haven't actually done that work to go, this really gets on my nerves. They don't actually boil that down. And your question and mine are very similar around that. There's what is this thing that constantly irritates? But if you don't have the self-knowledge, then you feel kind of impotent in the face of that challenge. It feels like, well, I can't do anything. However, if you have the self-knowledge and you haven't worked out what it is that's bothering you, it's like, well, I got all this stuff. Now what?
Yeah.
So I love what you're saying here, Rob, and I think it's important that these two things have to come together. There's more, of course. There's greater depth to this. But this is a great place for people to start and begin to understand, because I don't believe anyone came to this planet without a purpose. You didn't come to this planet to just make it through. I know it sometimes feels like that would be the easiest way, but it's not actually why you're here. And there's a difference you can make, but you can't find that without the self-discovery. So I really want to thank you for that. And I want to ask you, who instilled that in you? Who inspired that in you? Because you talked about being an encourager. But, one of my philosophies is we give that which we want to receive.
That's right.
So, you talked about being this middle kid, this sensitive kid who would cry on campus and all those kinds of things. That means for me that you needed somebody to hold you. And that could be literal, it could be emotional. Who has positively influenced your life?
Yeah, a few different people. For me, a rock in my family growing up was my mom. My mom, and my dad was too, but I just want to highlight my mom today. In light of that question, she came right to my mind, my heart. My mom was an anchor in the home. And Dub, I have to say this, in a world that's very chaotic, in a world that's filled with a lot of dysfunction, to have a person or persons in your life that play a bit of an anchoring role is so important. My mom, she made sure to keep us focused. She made sure to channel the anger and the frustration in the right ways, because it goes back to what you said. Anger is not a bad thing. It's how we channel it.
Of course it is.
And there's people in human history that have channeled it in really good, healthy ways that led to a lot of great, amazing things. And there's people that have channeled it in the wrong ways that some horrific things have occurred because of it. And my mom kept the family anchored. And in the midst of that, she encouraged me with my basketball. Was a huge outlet in the midst of going through all that I went through growing up. And if I didn't have that anchor in the home and then through my mom, her encouraging me with the sport of basketball, her encouraging me like I have gifts and abilities that she doesn't see in other people. And she would fan the flame, so to speak, in the midst of a difficult season, difficult time growing up. I just want to say thanks to Mom today. Right. Honestly, at the end of the day. Spiritually speaking, I am a Christian. Jesus for me in the Bible, I find a lot of inspiration from how Jesus lived his life, and just looking at the text and laying his life down, and not the nonviolent route, and how he would channel frustration and anger in and through love as his greatest weapon. And so for me, spiritually, I would have to say Jesus. More practically and every day growing up, it was my mother. And I think you and I share one of the greatest inspiring individuals in human history for me would also have to be Martin Luther King Jr. I think you and I are right on the same page. Here's a man that I believe, whatever that looked like, whenever he found his meaning, his calling, his purpose, I believe in that time he knew at some point his life would be taken. And yet with courage and boldness, channeling his anger and frustration in a way that still affects future generations. It's quite remarkable. And so for me, it's like, honoring him is more than just once a year. once a year kind of a thing on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. But I really honor him quite a bit in life, and I encourage my family and people I come across to do the same, because a true pioneer, and it goes back to also some of the things you said, true pioneers that had this anger, this frustration, they were angry, but channeled in the right way. They're disruptors. At the time, many people don't like everything that they're doing or everything that they're saying, only to look back maybe years later to say, I'm so thankful for that individual and what they did.
Yeah. You talked about having a tumor. I talked about having a fall. These are also pains and frustrations. And these are also, I think that every one of us in our own way is hit by a bus that makes us want to quit. Mm-hmm. And you can. It's okay. You can do that. You can lie down, quit, and you can do that. Or you can get up and say, I'm going to stop the next person getting hit by that bus. Mm-hmm. I'm going to stop the next person from falling off that mountain, whatever that mountain is for them. And, and it's that belief in that whatever it is, yeah. It didn't happen by accident, that I'm responsible, I'm fully accountable, it happened in my life, whatever it was. And that is including, and I say this to my clients, including, you got a tumor, a mass in your stomach, okay, take full responsibility. You're like, well, I didn't do this, and they get mad.
Right.
I'm not saying you consciously chose it,
yeah.
But what I'm saying is, how empowered are you by saying somebody else or something else gave it to me? How empowered are you saying, okay, if I've given it, then I can take it away. I have the power for that. And it's that shift that I think we've got to get to as leaders, because your whole thing is about, we're leading we need to lead from the inside out, and we lead so much from the outside. We're looking at them and what they need to do and how it needs to change, but it's actually us. How do you believe leaders can lead more effectively, most effectively? What's the thing they can practically do right now as they listen to this show, as they, over the next 24 hours or next certainly few days in the office?
Become a much more intentionally grateful person. There is something said about being intentional with our gratitude. Mm-hmm. We go down a road, Dov. Many people go down a road. They're swimming in the challenges and the things people aren't doing. But I want to encourage, I want to challenge the listeners and the viewers to start being very intentional with your times of gratitude. As soon as you awake, before you give in to what, your calendar and the calls and the social media and the emails, have a time of gratitude. It might be 5 minutes, it might be 50 minutes. Write down the things that you're most specifically grateful for. Well, you might be a leader listening or watching and be like, well, if you only knew my problems, Rob, there's not a whole lot to be grateful for right now. Breathe in and out, and you have a lot to be grateful for. You start looking at, if you're breathing, if you have family members, at least one maybe, that even cares somewhat about you, you have a couple people in your life that you have an opportunity to serve in and through leadership, you have a lot to be grateful for. How about this? How about a perspective of thank you for my 4 tires that got me to work today, mm-hmm. as opposed to just being all upset when one of your tires blows out. How about thanking God for the 3 that, are still alive and well? It's so much about perspective. And I think if we can begin to take every day as it comes and have intentional times, and some people need to set the alarm throughout the course of the day to say, all right, you know what? My 12 o'clock lunch break, I'm going to have 10 minutes of gratitude. And I'm going to bring my journal. I'm going to write down the top 10 things I'm grateful for. So we have to be disciplined with it. We have to be intentional about it. There's no doubt about it. But when we are intentional and consistent with gratitude and looking for things to be grateful about, it just starts to break the levees down of negativity in our life. Our perspective slowly but surely starts to shift and to change. And now we're looking for opportunity. We're looking for the goodness in us and other people. And that's the best, the most effective way to lead.
Couldn't agree more. Please tell our viewers, our listeners, where they can find out more about you, Rob, about the resources that you have, and about how to access you and all the wonderful things that you do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So a couple of different probably websites are the best way to find out more about me. One is just go to my personal website, which is robbholman.com, and Rob spelled with 2 B's. And then my new book is called Lead the Way, and you can go to leadthewaybook.com. And so I think with the self-discovery process, inside-out leadership philosophy, and everything you and I talked about and more, you can find it at on both of those sites for sure.
That's fabulous. And again, we will certainly post the link to the sites, but just so everybody knows, it's Robb with 2 B's and Holman with 1 L. RobbHolman.com. And the book site again?
Yeah, it's leadthewaybook.com.
Lead the way, and with the word book at the end.com. Make sure you get over there, take a look around. There's videos, there's all kinds of great resources for you to find out about Robb and about the great work that he's doing. And, again, we went through a lot of material here. Robb gave you those 5 questions, those places to look and to think about those things. And again, I say to you, please don't just have this on in the background. Listen back, go back, stop it, pause it, write down the questions, write down your answers, sit with those answers, take it deeper, begin to look for what it is inside you. You've heard me say it on the show before when we've talked about purpose. It's important for you to look at what irritates you, what pisses you off. The world is changed by those who are upset enough to do something about it. Right? Upset enough to do something about it. Don't sit, moan, whine, and complain with your mate over a pint and then do nothing about it. Get off your ass and do something. Change the world. You came here to change the world. And it doesn't have to be at a Martin Luther King or a Gandhi level. It can be at a tiny level. And it might be at the level of, as Robb just talked about, maybe you're here to change the world in a way that you've never thought about. I'm going to give you an example. Robb gave you a thought here. Think about somebody who you love or appreciate. Go and thank that person specifically, not generally, specifically. Tell them 3 things that really impact you by them being them. Because I want to tell you something that I've actually not spoken much about on this show. As I record this, I'm going to be 60. I've been on the planet 60 years. And in that period of time, there have been times in my life where I've been deeply depressed. And I've considered suicide. I thought through the process, didn't do it, but went through the process. But what I can tell you is, without fail, somebody told me something about me that I had not believed, that I had forgotten, and they saved my life. If you go and pay gratitude to somebody specifically, you don't know, you might be saving their life. And maybe you won't save their life. Maybe you'll just plant a little seed, and that seed will allow them to think, I should go do that with Joe. And they go do it with Joe, and Joe's impacted, and it's wonderful. And then Joe thinks, what a great idea, and Joe goes do it with his daughter. And as he does it with his daughter, maybe it saves his daughter's life. You have no idea of the impact you can have by stepping into that. Because as I talk about, you've heard me talk about it with deep greatness, as Robb talked about here with looking for the seeds of greatness, we have to nurture the greatness that is within us. But we also have to nurture that greatness within others. But you can't do it without looking at yourself first. So this is a very important message to you. I encourage you to make sure you step into it. Again, go find out about Robb at RobbHolman.com. Take a look. Go find the resources. We want to thank Robb for being with us today. Thank you so much, sir. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
It's been great being on with you. And like I said, you're getting me all fired up. I feel like I got to just go and give a talk somewhere now. I'm going to find one to make that happen. So thank you for all that you do and being a huge pioneer in the leadership space, because people like you are truly making a difference. So I just want to thank you publicly for all that you do. And I'm so glad that I found you. Because I know you'll continue to be a great encouragement to me and many others around the globe. So thanks.
Thank you, Robb. It's great having you here. And for you, dear listener, again, make sure you listen back. And remember, the research consistently shows that one of the biggest challenges facing even the most successful companies is somewhat counterintuitive, in that these fast-growing companies often hit a point where they realize they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing talent, only to have them leaving them at just a crazy turnover rate. So if you're sick of investing in training and developing your talent, only have them leave you before you get your ROI, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside your organization by tapping into your purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, providing you with the concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and keep you there. Why? Because you can't outsource authenticity. Also, remember to get yourself over to the Matrix for your Matrix self-assessment tool. It's your leadership self-assessment tool. It's at matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, valued at $197, absolutely free to you. You don't need the www. So just Matrix like the movie, fullmontyleadership.com. I'm your host, Dov Barron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about what's irritating you that you were born to change. The tiniest level, the grandest level. Find your purpose, and you will shift the world. Till next time, this is Dov Barron. I'm out.